Well, thank you. I'd like to thank Chairman Brandon Creighton for inviting me here today. My name is Dr. Ben Carson. I'm here to testify on the importance of Senate Bill 17 and the Texas legislators'
We might need your microphone a little
Oh.
closer there.
effort to restore a system of open debate, academic freedom, and reward based on merit to Texas's university system. When the far left realized they couldn't get the DEI agenda done through the ballot box, they instead turned to the existing institutions to remake our society. As we have seen, colleges and universities continue to weaponize DEI initiatives by empowering bloated webs of bureaucracy to reshape entire institutions to comply with the DEI agenda. This ubiquitous DEI virus has a chilling effect on free speech and open inquiry. We all know the power of even the mere accusation of racism that it can have on a person's reputation and livelihood in today's society, even if the accusation is completely inaccurate and mischaracterizes the person's true intentions. Colleges and universities are supposed to be the place where debate and academic inquiry can thrive. But when we see things like requirements for DEI statements from faculty, mandatory diversity trainings, the rejection of colorblind standardized testing as a valid measure due to inequity, and top schools pulling out of national ranking systems, we know that the truth has taken on a secondary role to DEI. Many of you know me from my time in medicine. While I was serving as a pediatric neurosurgeon and director of pediatric neurosurgery at Johns Hopkins, I came to realize something. Nobody on the operating table cared whether the individual performing surgery on their open brain was black, white, or any other color of the rainbow. All they cared about was whether this was the best person for the job. When you're in surgery, it's not about who checks off the most boxes. It's about who can get the job done in the most effective manner possible. The point is, putting aside merit and instead emphasizing qualities like race, sex, religion, and all the others we hear about endlessly today can very well cost people their lives when it comes to the medical field, and it will harm the progress of the entire medical industry. Reports from Texas medical schools are alarming. Deferring to DEI policies, some do not set a minimum GPA or MCAT score for admission. Other medical schools are also pulling out of the U.S. News rankings because the rankings favor acceptance rates based on test scores and merit rather than social and racial justice. In 2020, the Department of Biological Sciences at Texas Tech University adopted a DEI motion to require and strongly weigh a diversity statement from all candidates during the hiring process. And Texas Tech even went on to penalize a candidate for embracing race neutrality in teaching. At UT Austin Dell Medical School, first-year students spend less than 20 hours in the classroom, and grading is pass-fail only, all done in the name of equity. These policies are not only insulting to a student's academic achievement, but they are also extremely dangerous. Like I said, a patient on the table doesn't care about the race of the doctor, and the life-threatening brain tumor getting removed doesn't care what color the doctor is either. Of course, this isn't just true of medicine. When we value diversity at the expense of merit, all aspects of society will suffer. Part of the reason I am so firmly against DEI agenda is because I grew up in a time when real racism did exist and when inequality truly was ingrained in our institutions. But because I saw this America firsthand, I can also say that that America is gone. We aren't trying to hide the past, and nobody says our country has always done everything right. But we will say that we were founded on noble ideals, and as people have continuously worked to live up to them. To say otherwise is insulting to Black Americans who lived under true inequality in the Jim Crow era, and it is insulting to white Americans to suggest that they are still somehow perpetrating this inequality through invisible superstructures today. It is insulting to our nation's history to say that we have not worked to overcome our past mistakes, and above all, it's insulting to the truth itself to paint such a misleading narrative of our national story. I want to close by once again thanking all of you here today for welcoming me to come and share my thoughts with you today. Senate Bill 17 is a great step toward rejecting the entire framework of DEI and restoring us to a country our founding fathers envisioned so many years ago, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
how do you want to handle the question?
Questions for the witness?
How do you want to let everyone?
However you want to do it. We can go one by one, or we can do the whole panel and then ask questions maybe. Why don't we do that? Why don't we do the whole panel and then do questions after?
Thank you, Chairman Middleton and Senators. My name is Sherry Sylvester. I am a distinguished senior fellow at the Texas Public Policy Foundation, and I'm speaking in support of Senate Bill 17. I've been working at the nexus of public policy and politics my entire career. I have worked on both sides of the political aisle, and I can tell you that if California Governor Gavin Newsom learned that the University of the California system included professors and administrators who persistently engaged in pushing free market, merit-based achievement, and pro-capitalism messages, he would shut them down immediately. If he found out that the administrators of state colleges and universities were almost exclusively made up of individuals whose only job is to promulgate theories of American exceptionalism, he would not hesitate to get rid of them. So how is it that Texas persists in allowing taxpayer-funded universities and colleges to continue their war against the principles and ideas of individual initiative, entrepreneurialism, and traditional values that have made our country great and Texas prosper? DEI is a billion-dollar industry and a full employment act for bureaucrats. It has become the driving ideology on many Texas campuses. Recent reports from the Heritage Foundation, the National Association of Scholars, Do No Harm, the Claremont Institute, all uncovered vast DEI administrative networks at Texas major universities that control hiring and promotion, as well as employing aggressive strategies that infuse the twisted principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion into the curriculum. Rooted in critical race theory and new gender ideologies, DEI has morphed both theories beyond being just left-wing propaganda into structured operating systems. John Saylor, author of the NAS report on the University of Texas at Houston, describes DEI policies as vague. That is likely no accident. But while it is hard to specifically describe what DEI is, it is very clear what DEI is not. DEI has nothing to do with civil rights. It runs counter to the 1964 Civil Rights Act, the Equal Protection Clause, Title IX, Title VII, and the U.S. Constitution. DEI is not minority recruitment, and there is no evidence it is effective in increasing successful college outcomes for minority and women students. DEI is not about freedom of speech. In fact, we have daily evidence that it stifles speech on campuses. DEI is not about equality. It creates new standards of inequality. Finally, DEI has absolutely nothing to do with what is taught on campus about the history of racism in Texas or in America. While we are not meant to know exactly what DEI is, we have many examples of what it looks like. For example, the template for the fall schedule at the UT Macomb School of Business demonstrates the results of a DEI-driven culture. The guide for professors includes a, quote, content warning section that some of the business courses may be offensive or result in curriculum-induced trauma. That's a real thing. It is not clear exactly what kind of trauma could result from Econ 101. The template also includes an entire section on pronouns, directing professors to identify their pronouns for students: she, he, they, she. The McCombs Business School also includes a land acknowledgement section that attempts to list every native tribe that has even a tangential connection to Texas, thereby distorting the entire picture. The Spanish were here before the Comanches, for example, so perhaps we should give a shout out to His Most Catholic Majesty Carlos III. Most professors don't complain about these things because until recently they were required to provide a diversity statement before they could even be considered for a job at UT. The statement must include proof of their adherence to the ideology of DEI. 26 of the 37 Texas universities and 51 of the 64 colleges within the University of Texas, Texas A&M, Texas Tech, the University of Houston, and the University of Texas of North Texas have numerous DEI officers, extensive DEI administrative infrastructures, and dedicated DEI committees or DEI objectives in their college strategic plans. These do not include equal opportunity offices and Title IX offices. Diversity, inclusion, and equality, not equity, are deeply rooted American values that embody our founding belief that all people are guaranteed the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's time we reclaimed those values.
Thank you, Sherry. Adam?
My name is Adam Kissel. I'm visiting fellow for higher education reform at the Heritage Foundation, speaking in favor of the bill. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, and other members, thanks for this opportunity. I've worked in higher education policy, advocacy, and philanthropy throughout my career. For 5 years, I worked at the Foundation for Individual Rights in Education, or FIRE, defending faculty members and students against violations of their rights. Mr. Chair, DEI programs are often expensive, counterproductive, and even sometimes unlawful. There's a big difference between what DEI programs claim to do and what they usually or actually do. The fundamental mistake of DEI is to categorize people by group identity rather than as unique individuals. Diversity programs use identity as a proxy for the actual viewpoint diversity that makes colleges flourish. When a college privileges race and sex, it marginalizes other identities. Unpopular minorities do not get the same resources that the popular ones get. I have no doubt that the most underrepresented group at Texas colleges are politically conservative faculty members. Indeed, institutions across Texas and nationwide have filtered faculty job applications on the basis of required DEI statements. These statements have enabled universities to engage in unlawful discrimination. We no longer ask if you are a member of the Communist Party, but these required statements do the same. Regarding equity, I wish it were true that it meant fairness in treating each individual as he deserves. But in practice, equity means equality of outcome by identity group. For example, it means counting outcomes like faculty composition or graduation rates by race, then claiming that disparate outcomes are the result of systemic racism, then advocating for disparate treatment by race to affect the outcomes. In other words, an outcome-based definition of equity often leads to unlawful discrimination. I should know I have filed around 200 allegations of discrimination in educational programs with the U.S. Department of Education, and they usually succeed. Regarding inclusion, DEI offices now fight microaggressions, meaning minor expressions that are not explicitly racist, but which someone subjectively feels might be racist. As a result, people walk on eggshells on our campuses. DEI officials have promulgated speech codes and bias response teams to enforce rules against speech that DEI officials dislike. FIRE's National Report on Campus Climate shows that students across Texas and the country, not just individual cases, but across the country, feel unable to say what they really think. UT ranks 180th out of 203 institutions on campus climate for free speech. 2/3 of UT and A&M students feel uncomfortable publicly disagreeing with a professor about a controversial topic, and more than half of UT students surveyed feel uncomfortable expressing their views to other students. In 2020, UT disbanded its bias response team as a result of a free speech lawsuit. The DEI bureaucracy is also expensive. A Heritage Foundation study found an average of 45 DEI staff per university in the country. A&M had 46. Texas Tech had 3.8 DEI staff for every 100 regular faculty. On average, the DEI bureaucracy is more than 4 times the number who help students with disabilities, 1.4 times the size of history departments. History departments, not DEI offices, are where we should learn who we are as a country. Research also shows that DEI efforts are often worthless or counterproductive, and this is the national level research. Quick examples. A nationwide study by Baylor University faculty found that chief diversity officers had no effect within 4 years on minority hiring. The concept of unconscious bias has largely been debunked. A study by a Harvard professor, the one that you mentioned, Mr. Chair, found that diversity training often makes the firm less diverse because managers resist strong-arming. I believe we are here today because the people of Texas no longer trust their public colleges to promote equality. There are far too many examples of campus shoutdowns, disinvitations, just think of Stanford Law School recently, often instigated by DEI leaders who cause divisions rather than heal them. Thank you again for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you, Adam. Dr. Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. I would like to thank all of you for allowing us to come before you today and share our testimony, and I'm testifying for Senate Bill 17. My name is Dr. Richard Johnson, and I'm the director of the Booker T. Washington Initiative with Texas Public Policy Foundation, where I review public policy to determine the impact on the African American community. My doctorate degree is in education administration with a specialization in higher education. I also teach graduate students at Houston Christian University in education and law and policy. Dr. King and many others gave their lives for freedom, justice, and equality. He once said, one cannot begin to live until he can rise above the narrow confinements of his own individualistic concerns to the broader concerns of all humanity. And Dr. King also admonished us on many occasions how we should base our abilities not on the content, not on our skin color, but the content of our character. Recently, troubling information has come about with colleges and universities being exception to the nation's promise of equality for all. This has come in the form of new positions on the banner of diversity, equity, and inclusion, shuffling administrative hierarchy on campuses to accommodate an ideology of focus on predetermined outcomes. I had a great opportunity, Mr. Chairman, this past week to take my youngest son to the Final Four. And as we watched the game amidst 75,000 people, the only thing that really came to mind was a coat of many colors. There were people there from all races, creeds, and colors. My 11-year-old son, who plays AAU basketball, looked up to me and he said, "Dad, who are you rooting for?" I said, "Well, I like 2 of the teams." He looked at me and laughed and he said, "Dad, only one team can be a champion this year." After watching the first 2 games, we both decided that UConn would be our choice. Analyzing the teams, they both were matched pound for pound. But there was only one characteristic that stood out about UConn. They stuck to the play. No matter how the tempo changed, they remained consistent and resolute. And at the end of the game, UConn became the true champions simply because they worked hard, they were consistent, and it was based on merit. In these days where individuals are modifying meanings of terms to fit social and political narratives, we must be diligent. We must be diligent about protecting anti-discrimination policies. Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 states that no person in the United States shall, on the grounds of race, color, or national origin, be excluded from participation in be denied the benefit of or be subject to discrimination under any program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. I usually look at situations through naturalistic observation. I'm a visual learner. And so what I did was I went back and I looked at the NCAA championship of 1960. And as I looked at Iowa State and Golden Bears of California, I looked at the crowd. The crowd looked very different than the crowd me and my son sat in. And only 2 years after 1964, 2 years, in 1966, the Texas Western University basketball team won the national championship. Now, both teams, Kentucky had 12 players, and Texas Western had 12 players. Kentucky was still following the equity model, predetermined based on race. All 12 of their players were white. Texas Western model was following the equality model. They had 6 African-American players, 4 white players, and 2 Hispanic players. The battle here is not whether or not we want diversity. Everybody wants diversity. The battle here is not whether or not you want inclusion. Equality brings inclusion, which we've seen that happen. The battle here is equity, the equity model versus the equality model. The equality model has proven to us that it has brought us diversity, it has brought us inclusion, and it has brought us great value in the United States of America. And Dr. King had it right. There was a promise note. There was a promise note to America, and it was found in our Declaration of Independence, that we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and among them are life, the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness. The key to this battle right now is the equality question. And Senator Royce West is right. We have come a long way since 1964. One of my favorites was Congressman Adam Clayton Powell Jr., who in his day was the congressman who chaired Education and Labor. But what made Congressman Powell work with Senator Dirksen, who's a Republican, who's an Anglo-Republican, a black Democrat, and then a president who's a Democrat, to overcome discrimination? You know why? Because they realized that discrimination was not just a problem for one group, it was a problem for America. Those legislators saw discrimination as a problem that adversely affected all Americans, irrespective of party. This was a bipartisan problem that required a bipartisan solution. Mr. Chairman, Senate Bill 17 provides necessary actions with institutions that violate federal law through noncompliance with Title VI, Title VII, Title IX of the Civil Rights Act of 1964.
Thank you, Richard.
This is
We're running out of time here.
Yeah, this is extremely important as we fight to maintain freedom, justice, and equality along with other national gains.
Thank you. Members, any questions for our witnesses here?